Welcome alongside here on Central Illinois Sports. Charlie Hall, Jack Hole, glad you're joining us here on today's episode. We will be talking with Camp One Central head coach Brad Dixon. The Panthers coming off of a state championship game appearance and a runner-up last season. Lost a really good senior class, but going to be returning some speed, and that's, I think, something that we talk a little bit about with Coach Dixon during the interview that I hope you'll enjoy. Really has done a great job, Jack, and not to jump too quickly into that topic, but not only that, but they're 76-18 under head coach Brad Dixon, and must be doing something right.
Doing a lot of things right. He's got a really good staff. He's had a lot of those guys hang together with him. He's lost some good people over the years that have moved on to help other people too and build other programs. And I think that's kind of one of the things about this season. You're going to see some coaching changes around the area. Matt Colas, a guy who really has been responsible for youth football at West Central and Winchester and Bluffs over the years, takes over the helm as Adam Brockhouse moves to his alma mater in Triopia. But don't be fooled too much about that Triopia thing. Rich Thompson's still going to be an assistant there, going to be a very busy man. But Adam had an opportunity to go back home. And quite honestly, Adam may have left a West Central team that was loaded for bear with a lot of young guys that had played as sophomores. And that south end of the conference could really be a battle this year. There's a lot of people that know Hunter Flowers and the Carrollton Hawks under Coach Nick Flowers are going to be good. Greenfield Northwestern with Joe Penbrook at the head's always going to be a very tough team. They've got some real good speed coming back. Calhoun's got a young man that's a big quarterback, and you know that they're going to do some really good things at Calhoun. They're not going to walk away from it. North Green, with their coach getting a full year to work with these kids, a lot of people looking for high things there. West Central is going to be tough. Don't kid yourself. This is going to be a good squad, and, of course, the Pleasant Hill Western Wolves, with the Rogers boy and some others are going to be a tough squad too. So I think the WIBC is really going to be exciting, and week one could really be a test of a lot of people. For instance, on that first Friday night, North Green will be hosting Concord Triopia, and that may tell us a story right off the bat.
Well, it's pretty interesting because Triopia is another team that lost a really good senior group last season. And so I think there's a lot of question marks as you come into the season, and I don't think you'll see a lot of change as far as system goes or anything like that with Adam Brockhouse stepping in. Rich Thompson, as you said, still going to be alongside. A lot of the same coaches still there for the Triopia squad, but a lot of new personnel there. And this North Green program that has had some years over the past 5 or 6 years where they've had some really good talent, some really good athletes, but unfortunately haven't made that move to really put a lot of wins in the win column for that North Green squad. But I don't think there's anybody that questions that they have athletes at North Green, and so I think that'll be an interesting game. I think another game that will be a fun one is the contest when, let's see, who do we have Carrollton playing in week one? You just scrolled by me there.
Minden Unity. And I've got to tell you about this one. That was the very first night Randy Blake ever helped me do a broadcast. He called me a couple weeks ahead of that, and he said, "Can I come with you and I'll help keep stats and stuff?" And I said, "Sure." A normal high school game, 80 to 100 plays maybe in a game.
Combined.
There were 198 plays in that game, and after the game he said, "Is it like this all the time? I don't know that I can do that." So don't be surprised if Minden Unity Payson and Carrollton is like it again, because with Hunter Flowers and only 26 kids at Carrollton this year in their program, they're going to put the ball in the air again. This senior lefty is going to be there. Plus, they want to run the ball an awful lot too, and Nick Flowers' squad will always be tough.
Pretty low numbers really for a Carrollton program when you think about that, and and that happens in small schools, and I think that's the thing you look at is things are very cyclical. I remember to a rebroadcast of a program, and they were talking about, well, this team did this and this team did this, and oh, this team's a perennial power, and now you take a look at that, and it's kind of like my son Tim and I were talking, and he says, "Man, the Lakers, they're just awful." And I thought, as a person who grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, the Lakers were it. And I think you see that in local sports just like you do in the pros.
You look at a Carrollton squad, they start out with Minden Unity, then have Brown County. They're non-conference games on the bottom end are Concord, Triopia, and Beardstown at the end.
Tough.
And don't forget, this Carrollton squad, were they not 0-2 to begin the season last year, I do believe.
That's right.
Brown County's been a team that probably lost some games they should have won a couple of years ago. Were really young last year. They're bringing some young people in, a new quarterback who's been around football since he was born, I think. And Coach Little will do a good job there. Men and Unity, looking forward to them. But I really want to shout out to Donnie Allen. 1-8 last year, but very competitive games. And if I'm not mistaken, their one win might have been the last game of the season because I think they beat Brown County, actually. I think that was their win whenever it did happen. This guy is going to have a pretty good team, but he's going to have Concord Triopia, a chance to get a win maybe against a young Triopia team, but you never know. Then a real tough Beardstown team. But when North Green and Beardstown play, it's kind of a little bit of a slobber knocker anyway.
It is, and sometimes the clock works, and sometimes it doesn't. And there's been a lot of fun things that have happened in that rivalry over the years.
North Green will tell you that happens at Carrollton a little bit too, but they got that new digital board, so there's a lot of things going on there. In that WIVC conference, though, top to bottom, there's people that are picking people last in that conference on the WIVC Facebook page that I think could end up in the middle of the pack, and they're all. Everybody's going, well, Carrollton's going to win it, no doubt about it. You never know when you start a new season. And I'm going to tell you with Camp Point Central, don't be surprised if they get tested right off the bat with Greenfield Northwestern. They better get ready to play because they've got a lot of new guys starting. Yeah, they're guys that have played in the past, but to get that continuity in the offensive side of things, if the ball starts hitting the turf too many times, anything can happen.
Yeah, and I think that's something you see that teams that have, or schools that have really good programs, like you see now at Camp One Central that Brad Dixon had put in, like the Jim Unruh Carthage days, you always see new faces, but it seemed like they just always reloaded with guys that fill into those positions. And it took some time, and yeah, even Carthage had some years where it didn't work out quite as well as it had, although I don't really remember as many of those not working out as those that did for a very long time. But yeah, I think you'll see a Camp Point Central team, as you'll hear in the interview with Brad Dixon coming up in just a little while. They lost a lot last year in a senior class of kids who had been playing a lot since their sophomore year. So that's tough. And Greenfield Northwestern, I think, is a program that it's funny because if you take a look at what they did in the 90s, it'd be hard to say now, but people kind of forget about this Greenfield Northwestern program, and I think that's somebody you don't want to sleep on.
Never forget Greenfield Northwestern. Greenfield before was a team that gave the Calhoun teams that won back-to-back championships in the state championships in 1A back in the days when they played at ISU. They gave them fits all the time, and that was the team that would go beat a Carrollton team when they weren't supposed to. Joe Piddenbrook played on a lot of those teams, and he's got an attitude about doing well there. It's also kind of fun because, a graduate of there, Patrick Bowman, one of the best football players that played at Greenfield Northwestern, has his dad alongside, and he's at North Mac now coaching in his second year. It really gives us a lot of excitement in the area of a lot of things that are going on. Of course, Pittsfield will play North Mac in the conference in the Sangamo. And I've been talking to a lot of those kids when they've been coming over for FCA and things and saying, here's the key. Stop worrying about winning an entire game in the beginning. You got to win a quarter at a time. And maybe it might be just a quarter or two that you win that first night, but that's how you turn programs around. How do you have good football teams? You have big numbers, right? How do you have big numbers? You win. It's hard to get both of them going on at the same time. So some group of kids have to grab a hold of it and say, okay, we're going to be the group that puts us over the top. Coaches have to say the same thing. And I think there's been a lot of work in the offseason in a lot of the area schools, including Pittsfield, that are going to show up this year.
Isn't that amazing, though, how you've seen that kind of evolve over the last, decade, maybe decade and a half? There were always teams and programs that had summer workouts or they had a certain faction of kids that were dedicated to the weight room. But you've kind of seen that go to a whole new level, even at the high school level, from the biggest schools to the smallest schools. If you're not working on getting faster, on being stronger, on being as athletic as you can be, you're going to really struggle to compete.
Because there are so many very good, talented teams in our part of the state, but we also find out they're very talented in other places. We went up north last year to a Little League state tournament for 11U, and I got to Lena Winslow, and I drove around, and I'm going, okay, So what's special about this place? We came through Lanark. So what's important and what's making this happen? Forreston, Dakota, Freeport Aquin, Galena, all these teams, they're good. We used to go over in the Oka area, and we would always see them, and they're back. I mean, the Tuscolas are still pretty good. The Arcolas are still pretty good, but other people have done that too. And co-oping has made a big difference if it's a good co-op. When you get a good co-op that's got a couple of football schools coming together, it's exciting. The other thing that's changed this year is we got a handful, maybe a dozen or so teams in the state of Illinois playing 8-man football.
Yeah, and I think that's something you're going to see grow as enrollment and really population overall in the state of Illinois is dwindling. I think you'll see schools, and I think the other thing you always have to think about is there's a lot of people who think football's, this really dangerous sport, which I still argue the high school football is as safe now as it's ever been with the technology and the helmets, and a lot of them have sensors in them that are hooked up to devices on the sideline that can tell you if there's been too much of an impact in a certain area. The shoulder pads are so much different now than they were. Just you're so protected, and I think technique is being taught a lot better at this point in time when it comes to tackling with your head up, really wrapping up, not spearing people. I think some of the penalties that have come in, you see people and they want to compare what happens in the NFL or somebody who's played a long time, NFL type of career. It just doesn't really compare with high school football. So, I hope to see that turn around. I don't anticipate that turning around, that you'll see numbers. But yeah, 8-man, I think, is something that is definitely evolving. And I think you'll see the IHSA eventually start a program specifically for 8-man. And I would not be too surprised that within the next decade or so, if we wouldn't see an 8-man state championship in the state of Illinois.
I wish I had some of the rule changes that are up. A couple of them I know about. One of them is a play clock. We used to have a 25-second play clock. Now it's 45 seconds at the end of the play, no matter where the ball's at. I think it's 45. It could be 40. You may be
I thought it was
right.
40.
But we're going to double check that, and of course, try to know by the first night, and we'll have some of the coaches tell us some things. But there are some changes that have been made, and after a timeout, they'll put the 25-second clock back up, but those clocks have been put up in the ends. You're going to see 40 or 45 seconds on them instead of 25. Don't be surprised about that. And then I think it's important, and we have a lot of really good officials, and we're short of officials, and we have seen some games that may have to get moved around and things because of it, but it's important for the officials to call the illegal hits. When kids come in and they tackle with the top of the helmet and they go helmet to helmet, I think we need to have some institutions, some things where if that happens, you have to take off 10 plays or do something, not just a 15-yard penalty, so that kids learn not to do that, because we want them to be safe, have fun, and really have success. And then I think the other side of that is the ballistic contact during the week in a lot of practices is kind of going by the wayside. They want those kids hitting on the weekends. People say, well, you can't tackle if you don't hit during the week. Well, if you teach technique the right way, the Panthers got second in the state of Illinois, and they only practiced in pads about one day a week, and they still knew how to tackle. Once again, speed kills in those situations.
I think something else that's going to come into play this year, and I understand the overall idea for it, the limit on the games you can play in a week and being able to play on back-to-back days. So, for instance, you used to see fresh-off games on a Monday, freshman games on a Thursday, varsity games obviously on Fridays for the most part. You're not going to see that much anymore. The freshman schedule has really almost been eliminated for the most part, especially in small schools where you could see freshman players play in the varsity game, maybe even just on a special teams. Can't do it if you were playing a freshman game. So you've seen that schedule kind of evolve. I know on the Sangamo Conference what they've done is they have taken the junior varsity games, which are still being played on Mondays, and some new rules this year where they will actually play JV in the first half. So that could be juniors down in the first half. The third quarter will be fresh soft. So your juniors won't be able to play in the third, and then the fourth quarter is just freshmen. And so while it still is a game at that point, it's a lot more about developing the players throughout it, and it kind of takes a little bit away from, I don't know, the competitive side of fresh soft football. I don't know if there's anybody who's super excited about being 9-0 in fresh soft football anyway, if that's really a big, feather in your cap, so to speak. But it's definitely a change. And the reason I say I don't know that I am in love with that idea is because it takes a lot of reps away from your younger kids in game situations. You take a look at a kid who maybe was a freshman, 3 or 4 years ago, and he might get to play, maybe half of the plays in a fresh start game and then a full game on Thursday. Now all of a sudden, maybe limited to a third and fourth quarter of a fresh soft game. I don't know. I don't know that's the definite answer, but it's where we're at this point in time. I'm sure there's a lot of science behind it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people a lot smarter than you and I who have made these choices. But I just hope that there aren't negative consequences when it comes to the overall amount of plays you'll have a kid play before he ever steps onto a varsity arena.
When we finished last season, we knew that there'd been a rule change for playoffs coming up down the road.
For districts.
And causing districts.
Right.
Don't think that's over yet. I think, in fact, they've got until like November 1 to make presentations of different rule changes. I don't think they'll ditch the whole thing. I don't think we'll stay with exactly what we've got. There are a lot of people that thought that the district idea was really good. For Pittsfield, for instance, it kind of keeps you in a little bit closer area. For Quincy, it does nothing for you whatsoever, but it makes you play people that are more your size. It would maybe renew those Beardstown and Rushville type rivalries that they had in the past, and Carthage and people like that. But it appears that there are enough people in opposition that there could be some changes made again.
Well, I think the proposal passed by something like 20 votes when it got voted on the last time by the IHSA member schools. And the interesting thing about it is, if you're a school who didn't have football, you had the ability to vote. Now, a lot of those schools did not vote on the proposal, but they could have. And also, if you're a school who was involved in a co-op, both schools got to vote on that. Now, in my mind, and I think that's kind of been the argument about it is, well, both schools got to vote. Well, yeah, but if you were a co-op and you were against it, both schools could also vote against it. So I feel like that the vote was solid. And, there's a lot of good information. And I think it's something that needs to happen because we've seen over the past, number of years now, football has kind of been the driver of where people end up in a conference because it's really the only thing that the conference matters. If you're a conference champion, you automatically get into the IHSA playoffs. If you're a conference champion in basketball, while it may be a nice thing to talk about, it's not an automatic.
No, but you get into the postseason.
Well, you get into the region.
And the thing is, when we went to 5 and 4 teams and the majority of them making the playoffs, being a conference champion, unless you happen to sneak in at 4 and 5,
which has only happened once or twice.
It hasn't happened very often. And I don't think everybody ought to make the playoffs in football. I still believe they should not. And I don't know that we need to expand it past what we have right now in 252 schools. Is that right?
256.
Yeah. And so I think we've got plenty of teams making the playoffs. But, there was also that thing. I talked to a young lady from Galena the other day, and I said, I'll never forget the year that the IHSA made 1A football 1 through 32, and 32 played 1 and all the way down. Galena played Greenfield in the first round of the playoffs, and that year, if you remember, Scioto, Northwestern, La Harpe played Carthage for the championship a la Wyatt Green, and the best two teams in the state probably played for the state championship. So, hey, not a bad gig there either. But a lot of things are going to happen, and there's still going to be some changes. We'll talk about those along the way. Most of all, though, we want to remind people how they can listen to and watch football broadcast in the facilities of Central Illinois Sports.
Well, it's going to be a fun fall with Central Illinois Sports, and we invite you really just to remember this, centralillinoisports.com. On there has our broadcast schedule, direct links to the broadcast. I know you'll be carrying the Camp Point Central Panther broadcast. John and I will have the Pittsfield Sockeye games each and every week, and we'll have video when available, audio all the time, and should be a lot of fun. But centralillinoisports.com, go to the schedule. Like I said, it has a very easy access point to be able to get to those broadcasts. If you can't make it to the game, as always, we want you to go to the games. I mean, this is really the reason we do what we do is for the people who can't make it to the games. Maybe grandma or grandpa live in another state. Maybe somebody's ill and can't make it. For the most part, though, we want you to get out and support those teams. And one of those teams that had a tremendous amount of success last season was this Camp Point Central squad. We were able to catch up with head coach Brad Dixon, and hope you enjoy that interview now. Well, we welcome you back here on Central Illinois Sports. We're glad to be joined now via the video call by Central Panther head football coach Brad Dixon. Coach Dixon, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Anytime you can get back to football and preparing for a game week like we do on Sundays, it's definitely a good feeling.
Coach, you've been at this a day or two now at the Central program, and let's go back to that first day before the first practice this year. Did you still have those same kind of butterflies and excitement as you did on that on year number one?
I did, and I wasn't sure. It seems like the off season sometimes gets harder and harder. Just to keep the same energy that you had from the beginning. And once the season rolled around, though, and we were getting ready for that first practice, when we took the field, I felt the same way I have. And I guess if there's a time that ever does go away, then it's probably time to step aside. But no, we're excited, and probably more excited this year because of all the question marks we have, and just the new guys in spots and seniors that really haven't got a chance that are going to get a chance this year to kind of prove themselves. And we're trying to put the puzzle together, and I think that's a fun thing. This year, we kind of knew what we had last year, and we had a lot of positions spoken for. But this year, it's, we're going to be a work in progress. So that makes it fun because, I think we're really going to be able to see our team improve throughout the year.
When you think about the number of years, now your 9th year as being the head coach of the Camp Point Central Panthers, we still have to go back to those days when Bill Reed made the sacrifice to come there and got a bunch of young coaches together and built this program, and he was so pleased to see you take it over. I was in Princeton the other day, and we kind of reminisced a little bit about some of those early teams, and those guys paid a lot of dues, did they not?
Yeah, I came here in 2007, and Coach Ray playing here in 2001 was the only team that had ever made the playoffs at that point, and we were kind of I don't know if we were the laughing stock, but we were always that team that played in a lot of homecoming games because everyone wanted to schedule us, and it was a work in progress. We went 3-6 that first year, and then Coach Reed took over, and we were able to get to 5-5, but we kind of beat teams that we probably should beat and got blown out by teams that were better than us, and it wasn't until I think 2010, we beat Macomb team when we were both sitting at 5-1 or 6-2 in week 9, and that was kind of our first win against somebody that maybe on paper we weren't supposed to beat, and then we went on a heck of a run there in 2011 through 2014. I think we won 44 games there with only about 5 losses, and then we it's the thing when you get to the top, so to speak, and how do you maintain it? And we had a few lean years there where we were playing a lot of young kids, a few early exits in the playoffs, and last year we were able to put a group together, and we learned a lot over really all of our wins and losses, and hopefully we can bring something like that to this year's team. But definitely all those guys that have played before have a part in what we do and why we do it the way we do it, and so we're excited about just what this group can do.
Coach, you got to the final weekend last year and got to play in the state championship game. Things didn't go the way maybe you would have liked them to go, but anytime you get to play in a state championship game, it's special. What was the attitude of your kids you have coming back this season after that loss, and what have they been doing during the off season to try to get back to that level?
I don't know if I really saw a difference in our guys. Our guys do a great job of training year round. We're fortunate enough to have a curriculum in our school where we train 5 days a week, whether that's in the weight room with our sprint training or our agility or plyometrics or whatever it might be. And so Monday after the state championship game, we got right back to work in class, and our kids continue to train all throughout the year. Came right into the summer. We added in the freshmen to the mix this summer, and our guys train 3 days a week. And, we try to limit what we do football wise in the summer just because of everything else the kids have going on. But the things that we did do, a couple 7-on-7s, 4 or 5 days of camp, our kids were very focused, and we really haven't talked a lot about that, outside of the fact that, Forreston obviously got off the ball and really got after us in that game. And, I think that kind of opened our eyes up a little bit to understand, what it takes to play at that level. But, it's really not something that we've talked about. This is a new team, a new group, and these guys want to leave their mark, not just because of what last year's group did, but because, what our program stands for these days.
Well, that semifinal game against Argenta, I think Bob Ray and I turned to each other a couple of times and said, yeah, there are a lot of great seniors on this football team, but my goodness, people like Bowler and Ross Miller and others stepped up, and we went, these guys are all going to come back, and the speed is unbelievable. I know I've been watching some of your posts, and a year ago you were really pleased first day of practice to have quite a few kids that broke that 5.0 in the 40. This year you kind of got another group of people, and you might be faster than ever, huh?
Yeah, I think overall we probably are. The guys that we had last year have continued to get faster. We've really put an emphasis on that. We've got a great group of sophomores that are fast with Dominic and Garrett Williams that are Cole Williams' twin brothers, Sterling Stotts, Eric Stotts, our elementary principal. His son is extremely fast. I think he ran the fastest 40 on day one. And then, Avery Lemansky, who was on our track team this year and led off the relays of the freshmen last year. And so those are our four sophomores right there. And then obviously you add in Colin Sally, Brandon Rossmiller, Clayton Bowler. Brody Waddell's a name that you're going to hear a lot this year, a junior who has, lowered his 40 by, almost 3/4 of a second, which is pretty unheard of over the last year. And then even guys up front that you're going to hear from this year. We may not have our typical size on our offensive line this year. But we got some guys that can get after it, seniors in Logan Tolick and just guys that maybe you haven't heard of or didn't get a chance last year because we had so many seniors. We're going to give them a shot this year. And I think, you guys are people who wonder, where these guys came from, but they've been coming through our program for a long, long time.
I think it's kind of neat because, you've always put an emphasis on your kids being in good shape and being strong, but really the last few years, you've really gone to more of a focus on speed. And, the old adage is speed kills, and I think that's something your guys have really latched onto, and it's proven to be huge for your program.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think, we beat Carrollton or we beat Argenta without, that emphasis. We always seem to get into the playoffs and run into teams that could do that kind of stuff to us and spread us out. And we never really matched up very well against them. And this past year we were able to do that. We were able to do some things offensively that we haven't done in the past because of our speed and Jones's ability at quarterback. But I think just to go toe-to-toe with Argenta on the turf, an explosive offense and shut them down 6 straight possessions there in that semifinal game. And I think we rolled up over 400 yards in a lot of different ways. I just think when you build the max speed of each of our guys, the speed that they can play at a game is so much faster and their ability to repeat those plays is so much better because we do so much at, full speed that game speed seems a little bit easier, as opposed to going out there and practicing for 3 hours at less than max speed. And that's just kind of what we believed in. It's kept our guys healthy. It's kept them fresh. If we do a little bit more on one day, we do a little bit less the next day just to make sure they get recovered and hopefully, we can stay injury free this year. But as coaches, we're going to do everything in our power during the week to make sure that Friday's the night our guys can perform and we're not going to ask them to sell out on a Wednesday practice because, Friday's the night that we need them.
It's important that a lot of people realize we've had a lot of conversations about things like Fellowship of Christian Athletes 3D coaching, and I think you've bought into that type of a theory where you coach the mental, the physical, and the spiritual part of these young people because you want to turn out people that are going to be successful. But beating kids up all week long in practice caused a lot of injuries over the years with a lot of teams, and you've had success not doing that. But tell us how you prepare these kids in this first couple of weeks to get ready for week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what we've done in the past is not what we do anymore. We've learned a lot over the years, and I think back to how we trained some of our earlier teams, and I know we won because they were very, very good athletes, not necessarily because we were coaching them in the best way in terms of preparing them, but for us, we try to only spend 5 or less hours on the field in a week. So, tomorrow on Monday, we will not take the field at all. We will watch film and we will do some sprint work inside, and we'll send our kids home. Tuesday, we will go in helmets only because it's a big game plan day for us, and we want to keep our kids healthy. We want to give them as much time between Friday night and Wednesday before we put the pads on to recover, and then Wednesday, we'll go full pads. It'll be a little bit of shorter practice. We'll get after it a little bit. And then Thursdays our game plan, walk through, get ready. And then Friday we want our kids to play fast. And then for us, we give them Saturday and Sunday off now just to recover. We were able to come back on Monday and Tuesday ready to go a lot better this year than the years that we were in full pads most days and brought them in on Saturdays. So, it's been a process for us to get to this point, but, and I know some people question toughness and if your kids are going to be ready to play. Our thought is I would rather undertrain really good athletes than overtrain, average athletes and make them worse. So, we're going to let our athletes play. We want to put them in a position to be healthy and fast and feel good on Fridays. And that's just what we believe in. And we'll get challenged in that theory this year with as many new guys as we have, but we're going to coach what we believe in.
Week 1, you start out with a very tough opponent in Greenfield Northwestern. Joe Penbrook and his squad are always prepared to play. And I've done a lot of Greenfield Northwestern Camp Point Central games, it seems like, over the years, but this is early. And so how do you prepare for somebody that you really don't know that well? They've got some young, talented kids. I believe the coach's son's involved in that. They'll be a tough opponent. How do you get ready for that?
It's an interesting game for us because we played them week 8 last year and then turned around and we drew them first round of the playoffs. So 2 of their last 3 games have been driving to Camp Point and going away with losses, and then they have to come back to us again in week 1. So if there's ever been any motivation to win a game, I'm sure they're going to have it because they remember 2 long road trips last year where including their season loss, their season ending loss at our place. And they return pretty much the bulk of all their yards. They did lose one of their senior fullbacks, but they bring back Denver Davenport, one of the most explosive players in the South, Colin Grummel, another running back, and their quarterback comes back, and a couple linemen up front. So, they've got some good pieces there. It's, they're definitely going to be ahead offensively than maybe some other teams because they've got those guys back. They've got to fill in some guys on the line, but so do we. So it's going to really probably come down to that matchup. Our revamped offensive line versus theirs, and how well our returning defensive guys can play against theirs, because we do have 6 guys back on defense, but we have some holes too. And no longer is Houston out there and Cole Williams and Tristan Broxick and Noah Strokirch and Bryce Fluster and some of these names that have played a lot of defense for us. So we've got to find those guys, and it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think it's going to be an exciting one right off the bat, with 2 teams that are perennially towards the top of the North and the South, and we better be ready to play in that game and execute and take care of the ball. There's no doubt.
Coach, I want to go back to something, if we can, for a moment. When you started mentioning the name of some of those guys who had been key contributors for your program for a number of years, it kind of makes you a little bit be in awe of what you're able to do with the program, because your overall enrollment numbers as a 1A size football school, you're kind of having to really develop athletes or get the most you can out of every kid you have, because it's not like you've got an overabundance of extra athletes just walking the halls who aren't going out. You've kind of got to get everything you can out of the guys that are given to you.
Yeah, we have what we have, and fortunately our guys are, the culture that's here because of guys in the past. Kids want to come play football. They want to work hard. They don't make excuses about showing up in the summer. We're also mindful of their time. I think we might have used 10 or 11 contact days this summer, besides the weight room, and that's something that we're not going to kill them, and we want them to love football at the end of the day. And so we're going to do everything in our power to make that happen. And we also, over the last couple of years, done everything in our power to play as many guys as possible. I think last year we only had 4 guys going both ways. Even with a young team, even with, not a lot of starters back, we're going to play as many guys as we can again this year. And we are, we're going to try to, roll with as many one-way starters as we can, which means some sophomores are going to have to step up, which means some juniors that haven't played. And I think it makes it exciting for the players. I think it helps them to work hard when they know, hey, if I give it what everything I got, coach is going to find a spot for me, and they're not buried behind, other guys. So, hopefully, those guys will continue to improve, but, we're going to do everything we can to put the guys in the right position. Thankfully, like I said, they work extremely hard for us, so that makes our job pretty easy, in terms of their effort.
Eric Jones, Not there at quarterback. They all graduate on you eventually. So tell us about the battle for quarterback, because many people like to know who's going to be leading this squad.
Yeah, Eric Jones, a phenomenal just player in person that we're definitely going to miss. I think he forever changed our quarterback position because for a long time, we wanted someone that could hand off, manage the offense, get guys where they needed to go. And I think throwing the football was always secondary because, there was a long time in our program that we were going to run it no matter what. And, Coach Ray's done a great job of diversifying the offense over the years. And last year, I think we threw for almost 1,500 yards, multiple formations, getting guys the ball in space. I think made us extremely difficult to defend. And Eric's gone. So who steps up? We've got a couple guys. Our backup last year was Clayton Bowler. I think be one of the most explosive kids in the conference. He's very, very physical. He started at linebacker for us last year. He's going to split time between wing and some quarterback. And the guy that's currently kind of the leader in this quarterback battle is kid by the name of Blake Eiler, a basketball player. He's 6'3", 165 pounds, and he can see things that Eric sometimes couldn't see because of his size. And we're going to give him an opportunity. He's made some plays so far in the preseason that we like, and I think a lot of people are going to be surprised, with his development as a junior.
It's interesting to me. A year ago, you were planning on certain people be at center and certain people in different positions. You had some kind of freakish injuries before the season even got started last year with Bubba Hughes, and he never came back and played center, I don't think, the rest of the season. You had another guy step in. The battles you have for playing time are really a key component of the success of this Panther program, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, last year especially, we didn't start a single lineman both ways. So every day in practice, our number one offense went against our number one defensive line, and vice versa. I think that's something to be able to do, and we've got some battles going on right now, which are good, and we're going to find ways to play both or multiple guys in each position and rotate guys through. It really doesn't matter who starts. We always tell everybody who we think is going to start and ends up starting at the end of the year. I'm sure this year will be much of the same as we kind of figure out the right pieces to this puzzle. And like I said, we will be a work in progress just with all the different young guys that we have this year.
Coach, you take a look at your WIVC North this year, and it's always a very tough conference, and you start taking a look at some of the individual players that teams bring back, and one of them on Beardstown's roster, Pascal, he's finally a senior, but that means one more year to get through Pascal Guilavogi, and he's a guy that you have to really game plan for.
Yeah, Beardstown's had our number. Coach Howard does a great job over there. We've been in 3 kind of epic battles over the last 3 years. 2 of those have came down to the last play of the game where we didn't execute. And last year we couldn't stop them. Chad Grimm was a senior. Fortunately, we won't have to try to tackle all 240 pounds of him. But, Pascal got that game going last year with 2 big interception returns, 1 to the 5 and 1 to the 10. So, for us, I know we've split the conference with Beardstown because, of a Brown County win and a Triopia win over the last couple of years over Beardstown. But, Beardstown has been the top of the conference, and they've beaten us for 3 straight years. So, until we were able to get that off our back, then, they obviously have our numbers. So, hopefully by then that's week 5 or 6 or 7. I'm not even sure which one. We'll have more things figured out. But, we've got probably the meat of our schedule right here off the bat with Greenfield and a much improved Winchester West Central team and then a Brown County team. Those are probably 3 of the teams in the conference that return the most people from last year. And so we've got to be ready to play because we don't return that many guys this year. So, we've been preaching that to our guys and they practice in a way that we, want them to. And so they've done what we've asked. Now it's our job to get them in those positions to be successful.
I look at your schedule with Greenfield Northwestern and West Central, your first 2 games, a home and away game. Then you're home against Brown County and route away against Concord Triopia, home against Beardstown, away against a good Minden team. Finish up with a home game against Hardin Calhoun on senior night way down the road on October 18th, and finish up at Pleasant Hill on October 25th. You know how quickly a season goes, and I'm sure you've been telling your seniors, just like you do every year, you better cherish every night, every quarter, every play, because it's going to disappear quick. And now it's time for these seniors to make this their team and continue the program.
Yeah, and that was our message after our scrimmage. For some of them, that was their last scrimmage, and we talk about how fast that goes. We had them over yesterday, all of our seniors and coaches over to my house, and just had just a fellowship day where we cooked out and played bags, and I want them to understand that this is some of the funnest times of their life, and we can't always be focused on the next team. We needed to take a little time out. We've been practicing football for 6 days the last 2 weeks, and we got to understand that it's these relationships and it's the experiences that we have as we go on this journey that we'll remember the most, and not necessarily the scores of the games or some of that. So we try to preach that to the kids and create opportunities for them to have memorable experiences, and we did that yesterday, and I think the kids had a lot of fun, and it just kind of let them know that, hey, we're all together in this thing, and let's run this out as long as we can, so we can enjoy as much time together as we can, because like you said, when this thing's over, it's hard to get them all together again. Just trying to get last year's senior group together this summer for one last trip to Buffalo Wild Wings was tough because everyone goes their separate ways. So we need to cherish each time we can take the field with each other, because like I said, once the season's over with, everyone kind of gets in their other sports, or and once they graduate, they start going their separate ways. So we try our best to teach them and preach that message, but things start going happening, and those weeks start flying by, and next thing you know, it's senior night. So we know it goes fast.
It's going to be an exciting season for the Panthers. Coach, we appreciate you giving up some of your time here and joining us on Central Illinois Sports. One more question, if you'll bear with us just for one more moment. We talk a lot about football, and for a lot of people, it ends at that high school level. Very few get to go on and play college, and even fewer play at that next level. And you take a look at a situation with news that broke over the weekend of an Andrew Luck who retires from football. What did you think about that announcement from Andrew Luck?
I was shocking for how late it was, and I think it was right after that Bears Colts game. But I give the guy props. Sometimes we do things for other people. We don't put ourselves first. I think sometimes as coaches that definitely happens. We try to pour everything into game planning and trying to get the edge on the opponent. Why our family life might suffer, or our kids and things like that. So I think Andrew Luck's situation, he took a look at where he was in his life with his health, and the fact that he'd spent so much time rehabbing, and maybe that some of that love of the game was escaping him. And instead of trying to do something he couldn't pour his heart into, he wanted to step away and be able to spend more time with his family and his health. And you give him credit for standing up and doing that. I know that wouldn't have been an easy decision for him, but that was something that we've seen, whether it be Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson or some of these people over the last 5 or 10 years. When it's your time, it's your time. And that's kind of the way I take this thing. People ask me how long I'll do this. Well, as long as, like you said, I still am fired up to do it, as long as I have the time to do it and I can split that time between my family and coaching, I'm going to do it as long as I can. But, I'm not going to be scared to step away when that time does come, or I just feel like I can't pour my heart into it like I have been.
We want to remind people that mixlr.com and gearedupbroadcasting.com is where you can listen to the Camp Point Central Panthers games. And Central Illinois Sports, John and Charlie will have audio and video of many games for the Pittsfield Sockies and the area teams also. Coach, looking forward to seeing you Friday night, getting a little pregame and watching the Panthers on their home field. I know it'll be a great night, and it looks like the weather's going to be good. And we're looking forward to seeing the Panther product of this year.
Yep, it's going to be a fun atmosphere and a fun night, and week one's always special because, you never know, and guys show up that you didn't know were going to show up, and, so we're excited to see who those people are going to be next week.
Coach, best of luck to you again. Thanks for giving us some of your time here on Central Illinois Sports.
Thank you.
It's funny because Camp Point Central is actually a program that had the chance to hire Derek Leonard at one time, head coach at Rochester, who's had some success. They went a different direction at that point in time, and people will say, oh, my goodness. Well, I think it's worked out for them pretty well with Coach Dixon as well. We talked earlier at the outset, 76-18. Expectations now that it's not just make the playoffs, it's several rounds deep. qualifying for a state championship game, qualifying for a semifinal. I mean, those are kind of the expectations now of that program. And that's something, Jack, if you had a time machine, you went back 20 years, there's a lot of people tell you you're crazy.
Well, I think the big thing you need to understand is Coach Dixon's still hungry to have what a lot of other WIVC schools have, and that's that championship trophy. Triopia, 2 or 3 times? I think 3 times, actually, over the years. In fact, Adam Brockhouse, that's their new head coach, was part of one of those teams, and Rich Thompson was the head coach at that time. You have to look at Calhoun, who has a couple of those. Route, who has one of those championships. Greenfield got second one year in 2A, and they've done quite well. And I think if they'd have been in 1A, I don't know if they could have done any better than they did in 2A, but they're a tremendous program. We've had WIVC teams who have done really, really well, but people like Tom Little at Brown County and Coach Dixon and the folks at Minden and other places, they're hungry to have some more things happen, and it all comes with hard work. But we also found out how good that Forreston team was a year ago, who lost 2 games during the season.
Crazy.
To Lena Winslow and Lanark. And a lot of people would tell you that when Lena and the Forreston squad played each other, I believe in the semifinals, overtime, if I'm not mistaken, it was the championship game. It probably was towards the talent of both. And, you always look at those games and say, well, if you played somebody 10 times, how would it work out? Well, if Lena Winslow played Forreston 10 times, most of the people from Forreston would tell you they might have won 3 or 4 of them, but they won the one that counted.
Right.
And that's all that makes any difference. They don't make you play somebody 2 out of 3 in football, and you got to do the best you can do. A lot of it's the hard work. We're going to work really hard to bring those games to you. We've got an app available on mixlr.com where you can get it on your phone, listen like Matt Hughes does, and Gene Weldy and others while they're at the game. We think that's cool. We want you to go to the games, but we also want you to be able to listen to the games. And I like this part too. They're archived, so you can come back and listen to them, and the young people that played the games will be able to hear them too.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. I do want to touch on something. Really our purpose here at Central Illinois Sports is talking local sports. We're not going to get much into the national scene. There's millions of people literally talking about that. But I do want to touch on something we talked with Coach Dixon about with the Andrew Luck situation that happened over the weekend. And it was pretty interesting and shocking, quite honestly, that he retired all of a sudden. But I think it puts it into perspective pretty quickly, even at a high school level. If it's not fun, if it's not something that you feel like you're getting fulfillment in your life, maybe it's time to move on to something else.
Not a problem at all, not taking a spot that somebody else would like to have. It'll make it tough for the Colts this year. We know of a couple area situations where young people won't be able to play football this season because of injuries and other things that have happened. But always remember this. Coach Dixon's preached it for a long time, Coach Petty and others. Every play could be your last. It may be the last thing you ever get to do. Probably after high school, you're not going to get to play football anymore, so enjoy doing all the things you do there. Play other things, play a lot of sports, have a lot of fun, work hard, and you know what? Wins and losses are wonderful things, but with us, with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, we talk about playing sports God's way, and we think that's real important, to give it all to the glory of God in what you do. And you'll hear me talking a lot about FCA and inviting people to get huddles started in their areas and things like that too. There's nothing that makes me prouder than to see a couple of teams come together after a game and share a prayer and let each other know they care about them and thank God for the opportunity to get to play whatever they're playing.
Yeah, it's definitely always neat to see. You mentioned Paul Petty a moment ago, and what a summer they had at the Petty household with Noah having his incident and unable to play this season, but is out there, I think, every day at practice, kind of, assisting as he can and cheering everybody on. But I think that's a perfect example of, if you went back to the end of last football season, there wasn't anybody, doubting that he'd be back to play football in a senior year. And unfortunately, that's not the scenario, not the way it worked out. We don't know what the overall reason is on that. We're just glad Noah's on the right way to being as healthy as he can be and getting to live a long, fulfilled life.
We're just thankful that people are in the right places at the right time. And one of the reminders we want you to have at every school in practice and in games, those trainers are important. That AED, I think is what you call the unit, is important. And make sure that people in your schools are trained with the CPR and all the things that they need to be able to do to help people there. You just never know what can happen. You may see Noah someday again on the football field. You don't know. I've seen some people that said they weren't going to be able to go to the military because of injuries, and got good news this week that they were going to be going in November or whatever. God changes a lot of things, and we're excited about that too. We just want you to enjoy the sports that the kids are playing. Junior high baseball has been a lot of fun already, and it's going to continue on, and we'll try to do some fun things with that once in a while, have a lot of interviews with coaches, because we grew up in a world where if it wasn't for the local media, you wouldn't have gotten a lot of attention. And we're very thankful for WGEM and KHQA and people like that. We just know this internet source, along with one that Steve Surratt does with BCHornetsSports.com, is doing a lot of things too, and other people are doing some stuff. And nobody will ever forget some of the YouTube videos and things of the Triopia run in basketball. Those guys had a lot of fun too. So we'd love to show other people how they can make the same thing work.
That's right. We will be carrying the Socky games this year. I want to touch on them just briefly. It's the Sockies were 1-8 last year. They won their first game, lost 8 in a row. Riverton's the opponent to start the season. That was the team that they had their only win over last season, and pretty convincingly, really a running clock situation, which it had been a while for the Sockies to be on the correct end of a running clock. They have a lot of new faces in place again this year. They have a lot of question marks in a lot of positions. And, I think it's going to kind of be a process this season for Pittsfield. And the problem is you're playing in a conference in the Sangamo that there are literally very few weeks that you would ever say, this is an easy game. It doesn't happen. Even you take a look at this Riverton program that has had their struggles here as of late. You look at some of the athletes they still put on the field, and things are not easy in this conference.
6 of the teams in this conference are as good as anybody in the state of Illinois. Excuse me, but and the problem with that is they're not going to get worse, but the Portas and the Pittsfields and the Rivertons are going to get better. We've seen North Mac continue to grow. Mm-hmm. We know Maroa Forsyth, even though they lost a tremendous athlete who's heading to Chatham this year because he loves baseball along with football. But, when you're a great program and you lose a 2-time All-Stater, a lot of places would be devastated by that. They just move on. Williamsville saw that happen 4 or 5 times over the last few years. Good program. Auburn, I had some Auburn people tell me this may be the best football team they've ever had. They've got so many kids that have played.
That'd be a pretty good one.
Yeah, 3 years. Great coach, great program, super rivalries. Here's the key. Get out and watch the games. Because I think one thing about the Sangamo Conference in a lot of places, we don't see great crowds. Get out there and pull for the band and the players and the cheerleaders and the Palm folks and everybody else that's working really hard. Get out and support those local programs.
Yeah, and it's neat to see, some of the places we get to go, a lot of good people in that conference as well. Pittsfield, Jack, trying to think the last time that they started a sophomore at quarterback. And the Sockies right now have a little bit of a quarterback battle and a couple of sophomores, and Bobby Stout, Cade Corgett, going to both be guys who are going to see some snaps under center this year or in the shotgun as it may be. But that's a lot of pressure as a sophomore to step in there and try to lead a varsity team. But Coach Petty and his squad will have his kids as prepared as possible and ready to go.
Got some great running backs. I mean, they've got super speed at running back.
And they've got some guys who were running backs who may have to transition more to the line just because of a lack of linemen.
And I think the other side of that is they turn around, and the biggest focus they've had so far that I've heard is on defense. And that's where championships are won, playing defense. Coach Dixon will tell you he lets Coach Ray take care of the offense because he's really interested in defense. Coach Petty's the same way. And we wish all the teams well this year, and we're going to bring you it all. Win, lose, there won't be many draws. They have overtime. But win or lose, we're going to bring you those games and try to bring you as much positive as we can. Won't be there for every game, for every team all the time, but we'll try to pick up some good stuff for you all the way through. We'll also, with our podcast, have some great interviews with some of the coaches that maybe we don't get to see quite as often. Nick Flowers, I know, will be happy to join us, be able to highlight some of the volleyball things. And you just never know. Maybe you and I will learn how to call a volleyball game if we can get somebody like Kate Marable to help us.
Hit, point, side out,
Spike,
dig,
libero.
I don't know. That's the one with the different colored shirt.
Yeah, they're easy to spot.
Okay, that's good. And yeah, a lot of good volleyball in the area. I think coming up again this year too. It's a fun fall sports season. We're definitely looking forward to it here on Central Illinois Sports. We do ask you to do a couple of things: like the Facebook page, follow the Twitter account, subscribe to the YouTube page. Thank the sponsors. Those are 4 things that are very important that really help us make these broadcasts possible and spread the word to as many people as we can.
And make sure Kent Stouffer shows Stuart Hobson how to be able to get to all this stuff.
That's right.
Because that's important too.
Hope we can get him logged in. Thanks for joining us here on Central Illinois Sport. Thanks again to Brad Dixon on this edition of our podcast that we'll think of a name at some point, Jack. I don't really know what to call it.
Send us a text, 217-473-5151, something clean.
Yeah, or you can comment below in the YouTube comments or on the Facebook as well with what you could call it. Yeah, try to keep it as nice as possible. Remember, Jack and I, we're fragile, so, just be nice.
And I'm old.
That's right. All right, thanks for joining us on Central Illinois Sports.